Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the various supposed refugee and asylum seeker resettlement programs. Now, just to be clear, this is not people that make it to the US-Mexican border illegally. These are people that are already in situ in places like Afghanistan or in refugee camps administered by the United Nations or this or that NGO and so on. So they're all over the world, and some of them are set up, for example, in Pakistan. Now, much to my surprise, the amount of these supposed refugees and resettlement recipients to come just to the US are numbering in the hundreds of thousands. I had no idea. The numbers are big, and that doesn't include numbers that are going to be resettled in places like Britain or Western Europe and so on. Now, are these people, so let's sort of go through it. Are these people genuine refugees or asylum seekers? And if they're going to be resettled, why must they be resettled only in rich white countries? Why that? So there's two aspects to this, I guess. Now, the refugee camps and the definition, how do you define an asylum seeker and a refugee? Now, there used to be a fairly high bar for this, that you had to be escaping demonstrable political persecution and this. So it wasn't really something that was set up for third world countries. It was something, this refugee type thing was set up for like people trying to flee communism, for example. So the thinking and the purpose behind it wasn't really thought through that it would include the third world peasants moving to the first world. That was never really on the radar when this was being looked at, and when it was, in the immediate years following World War II. And there was a lot of influence in there from, say, Jewish activists who wanted this sort of thing so that the people could flee a place like Nazi Germany, and the international community would be forced to accept them. Now, as it turns out, certainly in Nazi Germany, the first thing that the Hitler's government did was they invited the Jews to leave Germany and provided a lot of resources, helping with interpreters and filling out documents, helping them represent themselves to foreign embassies such as the US Embassy or whatever. And so again, helping them. This was now remember the number of Jews in Germany at the time was sort of about 400,000, and you're looking at a population of about 80 million at the time. So as you can see, Jews were not even half of 1% of the population. So anyway, about half of the Jews did manage to get visas to go to other places such as the United States, Britain, or wherever. But that was it, and the remaining, give or take, 200,000 Jews in Germany, they weren't successful in doing that, getting visas, and so some of them took to exceptional measures such as commandeering boats, in effect, ships, and then arriving at New York Harbor and saying, "You've got to give us asylum," and then being turned down by the US government of the day in 1938 and so on. And Hitler made this point in a speech. He well, why is the world pretending to condemn us for wanting to expel the Jews from Germany, when at the same time you refuse to accept these very same Jews into your own country? So Hitler made the point there. Now, so the consideration of asylum seeking and refugee resettlement was very much built around those days, those times, after World War II and during the 1930s in Central Europe, and again escaping communism in the case of the Cold War. And so the idea of the third world peasants arriving en masse in the first world, that wasn't even considered, but it came to be reinterpreted that way in the modern sense. And the globalists have used that ruthlessly to justify and facilitate mass people movement of illiterate third world peasants into the West. Now, so the bar has been lowered to a ridiculous extent. The interpretation that applied 50, 60, 70 years ago no longer applies. It's been reinterpreted completely. And so any illiterate goat herder from a village from anywhere can go and say, I want asylum. Yep, done deal, and it's off to the rich West for you. Now, if somebody, all the refugee camps and all of the entire infrastructure around refugees and asylum seekers and all this sort of stuff is all run and administered by radical activists, whether they be NGOs or the United Nations or charities or supposed charities or alleged charities, it doesn't matter. But they're all radical activists who are super committed to this idea that third world illiterate peasants have a concrete right. This is not a debate even, a concrete right to go to the rich West. So this is an opportunity for the Trump administration, I think, to sort of revisit this whole thing and insist on that the original interpretation should apply. If you're genuinely fleeing, specific persecution, then there's a case for resettlement. Now, the next step then is once we've established that, not the low bar that it is now, that any illiterate brown person has a right to go to the West. That's effectively how you determine a refugee these days. And then people smugglers who are effectively being subcontracted by the globalists, by the way. Let's be quite clear on that. If resettlement is to take place, then it needs to be to the nearest match country. So if you're talking about, say, somebody who's a goat herder from Afghanistan, then where else in that region do they do goat herding? Where do you find that village peasant social structure elsewhere in the region? Is it in Pakistan or in Tajikistan? It doesn't matter, but where would you get the nearest match? And if you are a supposed refugee from say Afghanistan or wherever it might be, what is the nearest match in terms of social structure and religion and so on? Language. Now, Farsi is spoken quite widely around that region, so you'd want the person to go to another country they speak Farsi. Okay, the Islamic tradition is very, very strong with these people, so you want them to go to a country that has the Islamic tradition. They're skilled at goat herding. That's all they do, all they've ever done, going back generations. So find a place where they can do goat herding. Even give them a herd of goats as a gift to get them started or something. Gee whiz, help them build a little stone house that they can live in. Do things to help them. Be genuine in that resettlement attempt. But why must they go to the rich white? Why is that the only option? So they're going to go to the rich white West, which is not Islamic, where Farsi is not spoken or not the official language, where they have no skills, capabilities, nothing at all that they can bring and deliver to the economy, and where they're going to likely marry their cousins and have handicapped children and so on. I mean, why would any society want that? Well, it doesn't, and it wouldn't. And without the globalist ideological fanatics pushing it, it wouldn't happen either. So they need to go to the nearest match country. Now, let's say, I get persecuted in Australia, I'm ideologically persecuted. Then I could go to any white Western country and fit in, or maybe an English-speaking one. My German's not very good, but I probably could get by. But that would be the option. I could do. There are a number of countries I could go to where I'd slot straight in. Skills, expertise, capability, all that sort of stuff in another first world country. So the nearest match for me would not be goat herding in Afghanistan. The nearest match for me would be another white, preferably English-speaking country. So, the US, I don't know, New Zealand or something. So the nearest match would be, so this idea that third world goat herder illiterate peasants who've never spent 5 minutes inside a school classroom and only ever lived out in the middle of nowhere herding goats, that they're going to be transplanted successfully to a first world advanced economy is absurd. It's lunacy, absolute lunacy. So the idea of resettlement programs, given the millions of Afghanis that have gone around the world now and been given first world facilities and accommodate. In the US, in Britain, they give them, 4 or 5-star hotel accommodation, free meals, and everything. And the insanity of that. So anyway, the resettlement needs to be in the nearest matching country, and the rich white West is not even a remote fit for these people. Now, once the bar is reinstituted, where they have to prove that they're being persecuted, in Afghanistan, for example, there were numerous factions and sub-factions vying for control of small regions and villages and towns. So, if your faction doesn't quite make it, you could go to somewhere else in Afghanistan. If your faction doesn't quite make it, then you can run to the refugee camp, administered by the UN or something, and go, I'm a refugee. And all it means is you backed the wrong warlord last week, but that's, hey, you deal with that in your society. You don't transplant it to another society, which is what they're doing, aided and abetted, of course, by the globus-controlled United Nations. So I would hope the Trump administration would get onto this, because these millions of people around there, they are not refugees. They are not asylum seekers. They're just, I want to get to a rich first world country and they're freeloaders. That's all. And if they do need to be, and I would bet big bucks that if you say to them, all right, we'll just resettle you in another Islamic country, sure, we'll give you a few goats or something like that to get you going. But if you did that, no, don't worry about it. Nah, I don't really want to go. The only thing is the ticket to freeload off a rich white country. That's all it is. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.